Well, exactly 1 year ago tonight, BuzzFeed released the Trump dossier to the public, even though they couldn't verify any of its contents, some of which were scandalous and salacious. We blasted for them at the time. Now they're getting sued. President Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, has sued both BuzzFeed and dossier creator Fusion GPS, the Oppo firm, saying the document defames the president by baselessly linking him to Russia conspiracy theories. BuzzFeed editor-in-chief Ben Smith came on the show to defend the dossier's release a year ago and is game enough to join us once again. Ben, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me on, Tucker.
So you've been sued by the president's lawyer. What's your response?
Well, I think it's very much what I told you this time last year. The dossier itself is a document of kind of obvious central public importance. It's the subject of multiple investigations by intelligence agencies, by Congress. That was clear a year ago. It's actually a lot clearer now that before we published it, as we knew then. Important elected officials, intelligence agencies were investigating this document. When we talked last time, that was a subject of some dispute, and a lot of people, I'm not sure if you said this, but a lot of people on the right said, this is an irrelevant nonsense document. Now, what I see on Fox News in particular is that this document was central, arguably too central, to the FBI investigation. I think that's clearly established now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. It was central. It looks that. I mean, to the extent we know, and there's a lot we don't know about its role in this investigation, but it sure seems like that's right. But then you've been doing this for a long time, and you know that all kinds of, in effect, dossiers come across the desks of investigators and intel agencies, law enforcement agencies, and politicians, and people who cover them. And they're not made public because their contents are unverified, sometimes unverifiable, and they're defamatory. And so, you see a lot of stuff that you don't pass on because you don't know if it's true, and the words hang in the air. You libel someone, in effect. So you don't run it, but you did run this because it was Trump.
Your inbox and mine, as you say, are full of all sorts of would-be dossiers, of tips, of allegations, of claims. They are not full of documents that are being briefed to the President of the United States, to the President-elect of the United States, being fought over in an intense tug-of-war by intelligence officials. That, for instance, imagine covering the week that we just had, right? Imagine covering the Simpsons testimony to the Intelligence Committee, the battle between Feinstein and Grassley, in a situation in which you were not allowed to, in which you had no idea what they were fighting about. I mean, I just think that it's hard, that Americans would have a lot of trouble understanding the last year without this document.
But you're making a retroactive argument. I mean, I guess I would argue
this was true at the time. The dossier was a piece of dark matter that was pulling the FBI, that was pulling Harry Reid. And it's important to understand what those guys are doing.
That's the point, is that we now have the context for it, and we didn't then.
A lot of this we knew then. A lot of the reality of the stakes we knew then. I didn't
read it on BuzzFeed. I didn't know this was part of a Hillary Clinton Oppo operation that she took up from a Republican, anti-Trump Republican donor operation. We didn't know the extent to which Steele apparently had gotten some of this information from Russian intelligence and shady Russian sources. There's a lot we didn't know.
I mean, I think the descriptions, the characterizations of Steele's sources are actually in the dossier. But it's true. There's been a ton of subsequent reporting.
So I guess here's the point. So you're arguing, well, okay, it's at the center of the news, so we were right a year ago to run it. And I'm actually not even attacking you for running it. I would just like you to acknowledge that partisanship played a role. So, for example,
that is just not true. If we were in the exact same situation with a President Hillary Clinton, we would have run that dossier at the same time.
Really? So if you
I can't prove that to you. But but for instance, there was a day last year. There was a day last year. It was not the biggest story of the day because it was the day of the Access Hollywood tape. But also on that day, we were the first to report on the substance of Hillary Clinton's speeches. Of her secret speeches, I think that there's this perception.
Secret speeches to like Goldman or something. I mean, but that's not. Look, this is different level salacious.
Sorry you weren't so interested in them once they came out, but I mean, they were pretty interesting.
I was interested, but they weren't claiming that she was into some weird sex practice with a foreign government
I'm not sure either
agent.
you or I in our careers. This is obviously a very unusual document.
No, we have actually. Hold on, we have. There was a lot of stuff floating around about Obama and his personal life and of course the question where he was born and his birth certificate, and we sort of laugh about it now, but it was a big news story and people were making allegations about it, including now President Trump. If you came across a dossier in the middle of the Obama administration that laid out in some detail how he was born in Kenya and had a weird personal life, you would never run that. Because you would be attacked by every one of your friends.
If it was being taken seriously by the intelligence agencies, if it was being briefed to the president, absolutely.
Well, if it was a Republican president, look, if Trump were president at, I mean, it's all theoretical.
I mean, we all cover. I mean, Donald Trump made these ridiculous claims about the birth certificate, and we covered them. We didn't bleep them out.
Okay, but if there was a detailed dossier on the subject that had been assembled by the political enemies of Barack Obama.
Unfortunately, the dossier was his. He was smart enough to put all that stuff in a dossier that he published and sold as his memoir in Obama's case. But that's a different story.
But look, the truth is, this stuff was unverified a year ago. It remains unverified. I hope you'll at least concede.
Some elements of it actually have been corroborated since then.
Okay, but the big stuff has not been. There's still no evidence.
I think the payments to Manafort, and the Manafort indictment, are pretty big stuff.
But we are no closer to proving that he collaborated with the Russian government or that he's with hookers in a hotel room. I mean, that was a character assassination, and it's still unproven. I mean, honestly.
That is unproven. The broad outline of a Russian campaign to penetrate and influence the American election, I think, it has been established.
Yeah, well, that's been going on for 100 years. Ben, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.